Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Shorts. The DeLorean time machine was Dr. Emmett Brown's most successful invention. A plutonium-powered time machine comprised of a DeLorean DMC-12 sports car that had to reach 88 miles per hour in order to time travel. On November 5th, 1955, Doc was standing on the edge of his toilet while hanging a clock in his bedroom, but the porcelain was wet, making Doc slip, fall, and hit his head on the sink. When Doc came to, he had a vision of the flux capacitor in his head, and he drew a crude schematic diagram, as well as scrawling some hurried calculations. The capacitor was constructed afterwards and completed in 1985. Doc Brown revealed his creation to his friend Marty McFly at Twin Pines Mall in the early morning of October 26, 1985. And for its first test, Doc sent his dog Einstein 1 minute into the future. For Einstein, the dog, the trip was instantaneous, but to Marty and Doc they had to wait exactly 1 minute to catch up to Einstein in the timeline. Soon after, a new pellet of plutonium was inserted into the time machine. The Libyan terrorists who he stole the plutonium from intervened in a Volkswagen station wagon and shot Doc dead. Marty ran into the DeLorean to try to escape the Libyans. Marty accidentally turned on the time circuit, which were set to 1955, while on shifting, and he avoided being destroyed by a rocket-propelled grenade as he sped up to 88 miles an hour and entered temporal displacement. Suddenly, Marty went from a parking lot in 1985 to a field in 1955, and the DeLorean crashed into a scarecrow, and then the Peabody's barn. On November the 12th, 1955, Doc brought the time machine to the courthouse in downtown Hill Valley and started working on the cable assembly that would harness the impending lightning strike. Marty inserted a connecting hook into the flux capacitor. After some engine trouble, he took off. The DeLorean reached the cable just as the lightning struck, and Doc made the connection, sending the time machine back to 1985. Originally believing he was too late, Marty was in grief. Then, surprised, Doc recovered and revealed that he was wearing a bulletproof vest, having read a warning letter that Marty had given him 30 years earlier. Doc took Marty home in the DeLorean. Then he told Marty he would go roughly 30 years into the future, and went down the street and hit 88 miles an hour and vanished in 3 sonic booms. While in the future, Doc decided to give the DeLorean a now standard hover conversion. To afford this, he traveled back to 1938 and bought several copies of Action Comics #1. He sold them for $2.5 million in 2015 and flew off in the newly converted DeLorean. At some point, he discovered Marty's children were destined to accidentally go to prison, which would eventually destroy the McFly family. Doc returned to the McFly residence the morning after he left. Marty had discovered that his life had changed for the better. His visiting girlfriend, Jennifer Parker, and he were interrupted by the sonic booms and the wind blast. The newly upgraded DeLorean knocked over some trash cans, and a futuristic clothed Doc emerged from the vehicle. Doc made use of his upgraded time machine by adding garbage to the Mr. Fusion as fuel. Plutonium was no longer needed after the trip to the future. Doc told Marty and Jennifer of their future family and the trouble that had occurred, or will occur, to their children. The DeLorean lifted off the ground and its wheels folded, providing thrust. The rear louver then propelled it forward down the street, and Doc turned the car around to get the speed needed to make a temporal displacement. The time machine and all occupants were on their way to October 25th, 2015.